Melissa Adeyeye, and we'll be here talking about a few items. Give me one moment. I was clicking. Here we go. So our course goals for tonight are to think about what we're doing as leaders and to develop this skill. Now, in communication, if you've been following us through our other sessions, we may be building on some of these foundational concepts. Tonight, we're really spending time thinking about your emotional intelligence. So we've been talking about you all along, and we cannot control anybody else but ourselves and our responses to our situations. So we're thinking about and recognizing and looking at the influence of the emotions within our teams as we work with other people. We'll talk about some techniques for managing your own emotions in your everyday high pressure situations. And lastly, we'll come away with some skills to be and develop an empathetic leadership style, looking at the emotional needs of your team. So if you haven't met me before, my name is Melissa J. Adeyeye. I'm an assistant professor of communication at Suffolk County Community College. I have a master's in speech communication, rhetoric, and performance studies, and I've been teaching for about 15 plus years. I'm also the faculty advisor for Communication Studies Club and our Honor Society, Sigma Chi Eta. Some of the courses that I teach on campus are Intro to Human Comm, Interpersonal Communication, which is where emotional intelligence really stems from, public speaking, and intercultural communication, which is a part of every communication context. I've also done some consulting work for teachers and administrators in Asia, helping them to connect with one another, with their stakeholders, with their students, and improve their everyday experience. So I hope that I can use some of my skills and experience to help you in your leadership style. So to start, I wanted to share with you this quote from Carol Stern. This is a book that I would highly recommend, The Emotionally Strong Leader. An emotionally intelligent leader realizes the underappreciated and unrecognized potential inside themselves and their colleagues. And they treat their employees as humans first and foremost. So as we are thinking about our business, or we are moving forward in our business, or we're already managing our team, no matter what your product or service is, at the very basis is the human experience. And so that's where we are stemming our leadership from. People are your best resource. So how are we harnessing that? Before we start talking about other people, let's talk about ourselves. What does it mean to be emotionally intelligent? So we have these emojis, and they have taken over our world in trying to describe all of these emotions. I wonder if you could get all these correct. I'm not going to test you because nobody likes to be tested, but I am 99% sure that you would not get all of them correctly, because they might be different emotions for you than somebody else, or they might be mixed emotions, or you use it to show an emotion in one situation and a different emotion in another situation. And so this begins our exploration of what emotions are, this mixed bag of feelings that is a part of our everyday experience and seeps into how we interact with others. But to be emotionally intelligent, number one, means that we have to identify emotions. If you're able to get 99 of these correct, you don't need this video at all. You don't need this session, because that's the biggest part. How are you feeling? How are people feeling? Then once we identify that emotion, we move into regulating it. How do we manage that emotion? So some of the big ones that we can think about are happiness, sadness, anger. That one gets a lot of us, especially when we're managing a team, right? Feeling frustrated. How do we regulate that emotion when we're still trying to communicate? The third is being able to show empathy. So one, we know that we're feeling in a situation, but two, somebody else is also feeling. It might be similar, and it might be different, but how can you show them empathy and see it from their perspective? In other sessions, we talked about perception as being able to see things in different ways, that the way that you see a situation may be different than another person's perspective of that same situation. Here in emotional intelligence, we want to be able to see the other person's perspective. And then lastly, show a positive social skill in that moment. So it doesn't matter how you're feeling, but you're able to manage your emotion and someone else's emotion and move toward a positive decision making and behavior that helps you to move forward in a positive way. So this is what we're looking at for emotional intelligence. It takes practice, but it is a skill that we can develop over time. So let's take a moment for you. With those of you who are on, if you're willing to share, I would appreciate it. Please let me know in the chat. If you are watching us live, take a moment to do this for yourself. If we don't have anyone willing to share, I will share some examples. But let's take just a couple of minutes and use a little bit of silence and calmness. And I want you to write down, what are you thinking and feeling? In this moment and this time, what are you thinking and feeling? Then identify, why are you thinking and feeling that way? What has led to this thought and this feeling? The next, how are you communicating? Well, in this session, we haven't had any introductions yet, but maybe you've been around some people. How have you been communicating with them? How would you imagine you want to communicate in this moment? Then how is what you're thinking and feeling affecting the way that you communicate? And lastly, what can you do to improve your communication? Let's take about 30 more seconds to finish this up. Okay. So we're getting some really great responses in the chat. And I've just asked if you mind sharing. Just let me know whether or not, and that's fine. I can read it aloud for you if you'd like. Or if you feel comfortable unmuting, that would be great too. Okay. So I've got permission from Veronica to share. And what Veronica said is, I'm thinking that I can really use emotional stability. Sometimes I let myself get too emotional when trying to get my point across, also like losing my cool. Although I can communicate, I sometimes become very overwhelmed with my emotions, and I feel it doesn't help when trying to get my point across. That's why I'm not a courtroom attorney. I'd rather research and write. But this is something that Veronica wants to work on. Thank you for sharing that, Veronica. All right, I just got permission from Tina. And Tina says, Tina's looking forward to learning this. I need to perfect this skill set. It helps me to stay in the mode. Always think before I speak or answer. The mode of good communication skills. Thank you both for sharing. So those are both encouraging responses, identifying that one, thinking before we speak is an important part of everyday interaction, no matter if we're a leader or a part of the team or in our personal lives. Also recognizing when we have emotions and how it affects your communication. So if I want to get my point across, this may bring some anxiety, and that may be coupled with frustration. And then that can have an effect on my communication, whether it's in my delivery of the message, or it might even be in how I'm receiving other messages. So let me give another example. In our live session, we really had a great time. And I will not use anyone's identifying information, but maybe you can imagine this happening to you. You want to attend a new session of something that you're looking forward to understanding, but you don't know anybody in the room. You're also going to a new place. You got the directions wrong, and now you're about 5 minutes late, and you don't like to be late. What are some of the emotions that might be going through your mind or through your body at that time? Do you have anyone willing to share or are putting themselves in that situation? Well, go ahead, Tina.
I was going to say fear, nervousness, anxious.
That's three emotions right there.
Yeah.
So a nice mix and a nice ball of something that can really agitate us. All right. So what do I mean by agitate? When we think about emotion, let's now think about it as a physiological response to something. So from communication theory, we have 5 points that defines emotion. I might be feeling frustrated that I didn't get to where I wanted to go at the time that I wanted to be there. I might feel excited or anxious because I don't know what's going to happen in this new place. It's something new. There is an unknown. Tina, what was the other one you gave me? If you don't mind repeating.
I said fear, anxiousness, and agitation. I think I said. What's the last one?
Okay, so agitation of this isn't what I wanted, fear of the unknown, anxious also of the unknown, or might even be anxious for I need to get to where I need to go. Part of thinking about our emotions is what actually is that emotion? What is happening? So number one, know that your emotion is triggered. This has become a common word in today's lexicon, right? People are triggered. Well, that's an emotion. An emotion is triggered by your perception of outside events. Now, perception is a really important point here. It's how you are viewing it. So if we're going into a new session and you don't know anyone, but you have had past experiences of feeling anxious about places where you don't know anyone, that perception is what's causing some of that anxiousness, right? But for someone who looks forward to meeting new people, they have a different perception of going into that session, right? Into that new situation. So really perception is everything. Even though it was the same event, it triggers people differently. This is important when we're talking about our team. So our emotion is something triggered by an outside event and our perception of that. Secondly, it's signified by a physiological arousal. So now we've kind of skipped down to number 3. Tina shared with me labels, right? Anxiousness. I should have written it down. My memory is terrible. Anxiousness,
Fear.
frustration. And then what was the last one again? Fear.
Fear. Mm-hmm.
Fear. Okay. What does that feel like? Right? So I'm going to go to our little people. And by little people, I mean children. When children go into new situations, they will often say, my tummy hurts. I don't know if you have little people in your life or you've had little people in your life, but they will say, my tummy hurts. I don't feel good. I feel sick. And they're not sick health-wise. It's not that the food they ate was bad. It's not that they're hungry. It's that they're anxious and they don't have the word yet to explain the physiological response in their body. So in today, and yes, I hear this, butterflies in the stomach. That's that feeling, that physiological feeling. But what's happening to our body? As adults, we have begun to put labels to it. But what happens when we're having multiple feelings? Sometimes we're labeling a multi-layered emotion with one word. And so this now doesn't allow us to really pull out what is happening to our body. So between numbers 2 and 3 here, we're thinking about, I might be feeling butterflies. My palms might get sweaty. My ears might start turning red. I might sweat. Some of us sweat in different places. We're all different. Are you aware of the physiological arousals of various emotions? This is important because remember, our emotional intelligence, number 1 says the ability to identify your emotions. So when we're feeling it, when we start to get sweaty in the palms, that can help you go, oh, well, that's my anxiety feeling. Or if I start to get red in the ears, that's my frustration feeling. This outside event is triggering a frustration in me. Let's go to the 4th one. I mentioned this a little bit before. If you've been in a situation where you've met new people and it caused you a fear, right? A fear of the unknown. That was something that happened in the past. That past event is now governing what happens for you in the future, or how you're going to view and how you're going to feel that in the future. Now, we'll see this later towards the end, but there are ways for us to sort of stop the cycle of pre-existing norms. But we have to know that what has happened in the past for us is what sets us up for how we're feeling about, how we're thinking about, how we're experiencing emotion. Lastly, our emotion is reflected in our verbal and our nonverbal displays. So the things that we say and the things that we do. So let's go back to our example. I have another identifying physiological arousal here, twirling hair when you're nervous. This one is a good one. And if you're a person with long hair and you're going into a situation where you often feel nervous, I'll always tell my students, put your hair away. That's why mine is up. So I can't twirl it and I can't show that nervous response. So let's go back to walking into a new situation where maybe feeling this anxiety, fear, a little bit of frustration. And then we're going in to interact with people. So how are we displaying this? What does our body look like? Do we go into the front of the room? Do we have a smile on our face? Do we have a frown on our face? When people are talking to us, are we open to them? Is our body language open, or are we closed off? Now, all of this you are bringing into this room, but it had nothing to do with that room, really, or the people in that room. It was everything that we brought into that moment. And that's how emotions work. We often bring them with us from one situation to the next. This is not to say we don't have it in the moment or emotions can't be triggered in that immediate interaction, but it often is coming from a deeper place. So now that we've defined what emotions are, let's take a look at feelings versus emotions. So this is a diagram that is from our text, Reflect and Relate. And it gives us a definition, helping us to understand the difference between feelings and moods. Feelings as a smaller emotion, right? It has not as large as an arousal of some of the main emotions or bigger emotions that you would think about: happiness, sadness, disgust, fear, surprise, and I think I forget anger all the time. A mood is a low intensity state that fluctuates over a little bit longer period of time. You can see it almost like heartbeats, if you will. An emotion is a nice spike, and then it comes back down, a spike again, and then it comes back down. Feelings kind of go up and down around, and moods kind of persist as we go in and out of them. So understanding the distinctions between emotions, feelings, and moods can help us, one, understand that in ourselves. Two, identify that in other people. So when we are expressing or thinking about how we're feeling, what are we thinking about? What are we feeling? This again is from Carolyn Stern in The Emotionally Strong Leader, that our behaviors and actions, how we're interacting with each other, is like an iceberg. So at the top, you're walking into this new situation and you're interacting with people. And let's talk about the non-productive interactions. Like maybe you're very short or curt with people, not as friendly. Perhaps you're not engaging at all. That's coming from a much deeper place. Past experiences, having done something like this before, your personal history. What is your experience with meeting new people? What is your attitude toward this space or just in this day in general? We've already talked about our emotions, but your thoughts, your beliefs, what are your intentions? And we can continue on. All of these things we carry with us in a communication interaction. So as a leader, it's important for us to understand that we have such depth to when we're interacting with someone. So even a glance, when we're not saying anything, we're still saying so much, and it's coming from a very deep place. So what are some ways that we can think about being an empathetic leader? Here are 4 things to keep in mind as we move forward in understanding our emotions, being able to manage them. First, we need to lead ourselves. How are you aware of your skills and limitations? Are you understanding when it's not the time to talk? Are you understanding when your emotions need a moment to cool down? Are you in tune with the physiological arousals of some of our more negative emotions? Frustration, anxiety. I'm going to put in anger there. I think that's more intense than frustration. Even disgust, fear. Are you aware of what your limitation is? And then how are you able to regulate? Are you able to acknowledge that and then have a response that helps you to be productive in that situation. If you're not able to have a response or not able to make a decision in that moment, are you able to have a response that says, I need a moment before I act on this? We have to think about our moments of self-regulation. What are we doing to do that? Then we'll look at leading others. What are your interactions with others in the organization? We can think about that now. How do you interact with people? Last week, we had building workplace relationships, and it wasn't as popular as a session, but I wholeheartedly believe in thinking about the relationship that you have with your peers, your supervisees, supervisors. And this doesn't mean that we are friends in the workplace, but it does mean, how do I interact with this person? Do they see me as cold? Do they see me as warm? Do they see me as empathetic? Do they see me as competent? So what are our interactions and how are we being viewed by those around us and those that we may be leading? Are we thinking about the organization? So in a part of our emotional intelligence is being able to make that decision. So to what extent are you thinking about the direction of your organization? Now, for us as entrepreneurs, you are the direction of the organization, and perhaps you may have your business plan clearly set, but even then you may need to discover some new direction for whatever your next step is. Are you thinking about how we're managing our team to go towards that new direction? Are you thinking about what it is that you need to do in that moment to move towards that new direction? And lastly, how are we making sure that things get done? So I think at the end of all empathetic leadership, what we're talking about today is not just feelings and acknowledging feelings in ourselves and in others, but acknowledging it in the purpose of getting something done and getting it done positively. So these are 4 points that we can think about as we use emotional intelligence. So how do we continue to do this? What does it mean to have empathy for others? The ability to feel or to feel into others' thoughts, right? We've identified these may be the things that I do. I can feel the butterflies in my stomach and I can feel the sweaty palm. I twirl my hair. I'm using some of our examples. But can I see somebody else twirling their hair and maybe showing me nervousness? Have I observed my team or my colleagues to see their feelings in the moment? Now, I didn't mention this before, but as we talk about emotions, it is incredibly important to honor your emotion. Remember, emotion is your perspective of an outside event. So we cannot tell somebody to feel or not to feel. I want to come back to little people because it is often said to children, don't cry. We say that very easily, don't cry. They're feeling. Imagine someone saying that to you now as an adult. If you feel something strongly and they say to you, don't cry, you would see that person as uncaring and you would probably distance yourself from them in any capacity, whether they are someone you want to work with on a team, whether there's somebody that you have on your team or somebody that you would supervise. This is a very strong example because we often don't cry in the workplace. We say it's inappropriate. But even think about these not as intense emotions. Oh, perfect. Somebody said, I worked with someone that twirled their hair when they were concentrating on a project, but it wasn't nervousness. That's correct. So it may not be the same thing for someone else. So what is their emotion, or what is their perspective? So this is what I'm getting to. Let me get to the point. We're not telling people not to cry or not to feel, but we need to validate their feelings because they have every right to feel however they feel. But moving them through that feeling to something productive is what we mean by being emotionally intelligent and using empathy. So one of these things is perspective taking, being able to see it from their side, from their vantage point, right? It doesn't mean that we have to feel the way that they're feeling, whether that's a frustration with the project, whether that's confusion, whether that's anger. We don't have to feel that way, but it is being aware that they feel that way, that we can acknowledge, I understand that you're feeling frustrated about. And then we need to acknowledge what is the outside event that is causing that emotional response. What is the perspective that they feel that is causing that emotional response? So when we're seeing this, we can exercise some empathy. How are they feeling? Now, when we're experiencing it, there's two things that I want us to understand. When emotions are happening, we could take a moment to share how we feel. In the in-person session, folks were really great with talking about their experiences of a moment when something went wrong or someone said something that made them feel. Now, in that sharing of their experience, we asked the other person, the person who was listening, to express what they heard from their partner. And oftentimes, you would see this person give an emotional response similar to what the original speaker was feeling. This is called emotional contagion. So the sharer is our emotion sharing, right? We're talking about what we're feeling. We're expressing that, right? Non-verbally and verbally. But as we're doing that, it is very easy to feel the same way the other person is feeling. I wonder, folks, if you've ever been in a situation, could be at work where somebody is doing emotion sharing and they're expressing that emotion, maybe not intensely, but you could start feeling the nervousness that they were sharing in that situation, or the anxiousness, or the frustration and anger that they were feeling, or maybe even the fear of imagining something happening to you. That's emotional contagion. Now, why it's important for us as leaders to acknowledge this is because in emotional intelligence, your sharing matters. How you walk into a room, how you talk with your team, the emotion that you share is often what is contagious and what will be mirrored back to other people and to yourself. So as we're thinking about what's happening in our context, maybe emotions that are from outside our situation or even emotions in the situation, how do we handle it so that we are not affecting the environment in a negative way? Two things that we often do. These are two responses to how we manage our emotions. I don't know about you folks, but I like to cook with least effort. And so there's an Instapot. So a pressure cooker, I wonder if you have one of these at home. And the purpose of a pressure cooker, or the way that a pressure cooker works, right? You have to make sure that it is tight, right? It is on completely. One of our ways of managing emotions might be suppressing, right? Instead of getting it out right there, we keep it inside, like our pressure cooker, right? Whatever we're thinking about, we're not acknowledging. Something just was said to us. I start to feel it in my ears. Maybe that's my physiological arousal. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm inhibiting my thoughts. I'm trying to inhibit the arousal, right? Whatever's happening to my body. And I might keep, as the English say, a stiff upper lip. Any outward display, we are keeping it in that pressure cooker. But what is that pressure cooker doing, right? Um, Anyone here have a pressure cooker? Okay, Kirsten, you have one. Perfect. What happens to your food? Do you mind talking with me?
I don't like using it anymore because I might blow something up. I make my curry goat with it.
I love it. I love
I
it.
just cook it on the stove now because I'm not good with the buttons and the pressure, and yeah, I almost blew up the kitchen. So I just stove cook now.
So, Kirsten, we just don't use the Instant Pot, right? But that pressure cooker,
That's
it
correct.
has to, it makes a lot of pressure inside. And you're absolutely right. It often leads to venting, right? Um, if you did get pressure as you're making your food, and Kirsten, the next time you make some curry goat, please bring it here or bring it over to the campus to visit us.
I
Um,
got you.
thanks. To get into that pot, you've got to vent, right? Now, folks, we might be doing this at work. I'm guilty of it, right? We're all human. We kind of just can it up. We say that we don't let it bother us. We move past it, and then we go home and we vent. What happens when you vent it? Kirsten, I'm coming back to you. What happens when you turn that little button? Uh,
The wrong things come out, or everything comes out at once that you may not want to come out.
yeah, yeah. And that vent is hot. If you have your hand over it, you will burn yourself. You will burn yourself. So suppressing often leads to venting. And venting, depending on where you're doing it, can negatively affect other relationships. Now, we might do this in the workplace where we vent to somebody else. We might vent where we feel safe, and the way that it's coming out might affect that relationship. Okay, well, Melissa, why can't I suppress in the moment? Is that helpful? No, it's not helpful, because in a leadership situation, we want to be able to act in the moment. And that might be in addressing a behavior that is affecting the team as a whole. That may be in making a decision so that the team moves towards its goal positively. But if we're simply keeping it in and walking away from it, it doesn't help the situation, and it certainly doesn't help you. So venting will then bring all of that into one moment and um, intensely affect how you're thinking about this situation, and your emotions essentially explode. So what can we do instead? Here are 4 strategies. Encounter avoidance, encounter structuring, attention focus, and deactivation. So firstly, encounter avoidance is one acknowledging what is the event or the thing that happens that creates this feeling or that triggers this feeling. So is going into a new space where you don't know anybody triggering to you? You could avoid going into new spaces. But hey, you're an entrepreneur. You have to be okay with meeting new people. So we might avoid going into a space by ourselves. Invite a friend so that the situation is not, you don't know anybody. You might just have that one person who helps to create it as some familiarity in that space. Encounter structuring is thinking about what happens in certain events Yes, this takes time for you to think about, how am I thinking and feeling? We can go back to that first slide. How am I thinking and feeling? Then what is it that I can do to impact my communication in a positive way? So I'm feeling anxious going into a new space. I often move into a quiet corner, or I am not interactive with new people. Structuring says, okay, first, I'm going to sit in the front or sit in the middle, right? Take smaller steps. Second, I'm going to, what is your next step? Think about what are the steps that you can take to structure that encounter. Third is attention focus. We may have to go into that situation, into that new place, but we're deciding to focus on a particular thing, not the thing that triggers the emotion, but we're going to think about something else. So your attention now is on something positive or something that you can focus on to move forward, right? Instead of being distracted or derailed into a negative emotion. Lastly is deactivation. This is systematically exposing yourself to this experience so that it doesn't bother you anymore. With my public speaking students, we have a minimum of 6 speeches, and that's for grading purposes. But every class period, I have them speak. Because the more you do it, is the less impactful it becomes toward you. So what is that thing that is making you feel, and how can you keep exposing yourself to it so that it no longer creates that negative emotion for you? Any one of these 4 strategies can work. If you've been on some of our other calls, I have quickly gone over this next slide from Cornell Health, Cornell University. This is from their website, and I encourage you to travel over to their website. They have other resources for building resilience, dealing with stress, and these have been studied by our academics to help improve our daily lives because we have a lot of things to do. So what strategies can we use to become more effective and more fulfilled in our lives? So I'll quickly go through this resilience pyramid. As you can see, there are 5 layers. And at the bottommost and largest layer, we're practicing. Folks, before you can lead a group, sometimes you just need to breathe. I shared with others that in the morning, I will just open my door, open my window, and take a breath of fresh air. I know it's been super hot lately, but that air is still fresher than the air in your home. It's just different. If you're stuck in the office and you're in that AC, are you able to take a walk, move your body, get some air while you're also moving your body? Fuel your body. Think about what you're putting into your body. I often, especially in these months, I bring my water bottle to make sure I'm hydrating. Water is an essential part to our body. It's not overrated. Make sure you stay hydrated. We're often dehydrated. And lastly, get some good sleep. When we're leading others, these basic needs are what can create intense emotional reactions, and it has nothing to do with the project or the people, but it has everything to do with you are hangry and tired. Get something to eat. Use your snacks. Eat nutritious food because it pays off in how you're feeling. As we go up to engaging, connecting with others, this is outside of the office, in your personal lives, using your resources like you're doing now. Connect to any one of the other sessions. We have them recorded online if you didn't get a chance to connect with us. Do something to have fun, whether that's sending funny memes or watching a comedy or just making jokes with family and friends. And next, connecting with nature. We're moving to engage. Folks, we're taking care of ourselves. The self-care is not a fad. It is been studied and proven to help you enjoy your life and to be able to calmly speak to emotionally triggering situations and also seeing other people's emotions. Let's move up to that middle realm of reflecting. Our first part of what am I thinking and feeling? How is this affecting my communication? What can I do to improve? Is like journaling. Some of us have developed that habit of journaling. I encourage it. If you haven't, just keep a little notepad where you can write some things down. You may be able to see it. And just write out your thoughts for a moment. Part of that journaling allows you to learn from the mistakes. What happened that went wrong, and what do you want to improve? And that is a growth mindset. We are always improving. We are always growing. And I don't have to tell you entrepreneurs that, because you're stepping out into an unknown. That means you're ready to grow. Next, we're moving up to making meaning, right? We're getting into more fulfilling aspects of our reflection. So expressing gratitude. In any situation, there's always a positive side to it. And it may be hard to see, but it is a skill to be able to see it. Lending your strengths. We need this as leaders. When other people are not feeling their best, what can you acknowledge in them that can help them to their potential, right? And that's your strength, and finding other strength. And connect to your spirituality, whatever it is that you believe that is larger than you, that connects you to the world and to others. And lastly, this helps us get to our purpose. You have an amazing view of what you're going to do with your business, and having these supportive items are going to get you there. So let's turn from you. Take care of yourself. You've got to do that before you can take care of someone else. So from the text, lead more, control less. These 5 items are helpful when thinking about your team. Control your structure, not people. As we think about conflict, conflict is a part of every relationship, and it is a part of life. It is when people perceive that they have incompatible goals. Remember, we have this perceive or perception again. So you see the project going one way, your team may see the project going another way, but both of you want the project to go forward. Well, that's a perception. It's not the people, it's the structure that we need to clarify. Go back to what is your project and how is the project run, rather than focusing on the person and thinking of how the person made you feel. What about your task that needs to be clarified? Secondly, we've been talking about this self-control is the best control. We cannot control anybody else. Go back to that resilience pyramid rather. Take a sip of water, take a breath of fresh air, control yourself, to allow yourself to think, to calm down, and come in with your poignant response towards progress. Avoid taking it personally. Folks, this is a controversial thought. Did they mean to do you wrong? I'm sure if you could all emote, you would say yes. Yes, they intended it. So what? Don't take it personally. I know that's easy to say. It is hard to do, but once you do it, they do not have control over you. So you don't have to like that person to be nice to them, as I said, in building relationships. And that's by, don't take it personally. Don't allow how other people respond to be attack on you individually, because then that can create a perception of an emotionally triggering event, right? So allow that to roll off if you would. Third, surface unspoken agreements. What are your expectations of your teams or the people that you're working with? We usually have expectations in our minds, but we need to say them. We need to list them. And this kind of goes back to controlling structure. Itemize what it is that you would like to see and how you want to see it. Your business plan for getting started is just one start, but then you will expand to, well, what kind of structure do you want to have? Those of us who are in larger institutions or larger companies or businesses, your HR has has spoken agreements, right? They're written out what it is that we want to see people do in the workplace. And this may be something that you need to create for yourself in your new working environment. And lastly, let everyone be responsible. Going back to that first, that first quote that I shared with you, recognizing the potential in yourself and others. There is a strategy of using the I versus you. When we feel emotionally triggered, we often say, you, and that finger comes out. We start pointing at people. You did this. You made me feel. Well, the reality is that that's your emotional response. People can't control you. You control yourself. You control how you interpret and how you allow that to trigger your emotions and how you respond to it. But if you say I, the gesture for I comes back to yourself. It acknowledges your feelings. I feel hurt. I feel frustrated when XYZ happens. Using an I versus you response is what builds collaboration with our team. I feel frustrated when the team has not met its goal. Everybody is responsible, right? What are the skills of everyone in the group that you can identify and that you can give your task to for you to move forward? So as we're thinking about bringing people in, bringing our team in, we have to develop a rapport. Now, there are positive leaders, and I'm going to say not so positive leaders. There are people that you want to work with and work for, and people that you just don't want to be around them. So that has everything to do with how they interact with others, their communication with you or you with them. And that is in listening. A great leader is a person who listens to their team. They don't just delegate and tell people what to do. They listen to the needs, the emotions, the desires of their team, and they are able to acknowledge that potential and then help to delegate what's appropriate for each person based on their skills and their talent. So what does it mean for us to listen actively? So in closing up our empathy, let's talk about how we can and how we should listen effectively. So what does it look like? There are 5 listening purposes. If you can think about various situations at work or that you might find yourself in, you might find that you might do one or maybe multiple of these listenings. If we're listening to comprehend, we're listening to understand something. That's what you're doing right now. You've come onto this call to learn something new, and so you're comprehending as you listen. But if you're in a field of maybe mental health, which is kind of what we're talking about, and someone expressing their emotions, you would be listening to support, right? You're listening to hear what that person has to say and just support what they're saying or what they're doing or how they're feeling. In the workplace, depending on what your job is, you might be listening to analyze. You're listening to think about how things work, how they may need to change, what actions may need to be taken so that you can move toward a particular goal or to complete a task. Next, you can just simply listen to appreciate. And this we typically do for our entertainment, right? You turn on a movie, you listen to a comedian, you just want to appreciate what they have to say. We might do this in the workplace as well. Somebody's telling a funny story, I'm just listening. And lastly, we may listen to discern, to tell things apart from. You might be listening in another room, not really eavesdropping, but you can tell one person's voice from another. That would be discerning. So we have these 5 different listening purposes. The question is, when someone comes to you, what purpose do you turn on? What are you using in that moment? Because someone on your team might be sharing an emotionally intense experience, and listening to appreciate may not be appropriate. Oh, I just want to hear their story. That often turns into a good piece of gossip. I just want to hear about their experiences I don't know what you do with it next. But perhaps they are speaking because they're looking for support. They need support in that moment. Maybe they're feeling emotionally vulnerable. And so listening to support is saying, I hear you, I understand you. It is validating their feelings. Perhaps in that same situation, if I'm listening to comprehend or analyze more specifically, I might be listening to say, okay, how can I fix it? What do you want me to do? And that may not be the appropriate type or listening purpose in the moment. So the question is, how do you know which purpose to use in the situation? Well, as a leader, we develop the skill to be able to do it. However, let me give you some helpful hints today. Ask. Hey, I hear what you're saying. Would you like some advice? That's listening to analyze. Hey, I understand your situation. That maybe just leave it there, listening to comprehend. Or that must be really hard for you as you're experiencing this. Listening to support. You can ask them, how do you want me to listen? How can I support you in this moment? What can I do for you? And that gets us on a path to empathetic and active listening. So here are 4 styles now that kind of piggyback off of those 5 listening purposes. We have an action-oriented listening, time-oriented, people-oriented, and content-oriented. So an action-oriented is like our analyzing. Okay, what do we need to do next? I'm listening to this person to then have an action, and that's often your fix it. We are typically in this mode when we are at work because we are here to do a job and the job needs to get done. Well, if we are noticing some emotional responses from our teammates, maybe they're a little short. Maybe their face is not as jovial as they often are, or not as pleasant, right? Maybe you are picking up some nonverbal emotional cues from them where it's not just about business. Do we switch to people-oriented? It seems like, you're thinking about something. Do you want to talk about it? That would be our 3rd one, that people-oriented listening. Really, that's where we want to go. Validating their feelings, giving them a moment to rest in those feelings, or even helping to manage them. You seem frustrated. I'm not sure how you're feeling, but do you want to take a moment? So some of those strategies from the resilience pyramid are now what we can do being emotionally intelligent as suggesting that to our team. Hey, do you need something to eat? Hey, folks, I've provided some food over here. You know what? Let's take a 5-minute break. You can see if your team is disinterested, if they're kind of falling out, if they're a little tired. Being emotionally intelligent is knowing when it's okay to take a break. If I'm a time-oriented person, I often might get the message, I want that message to come very quickly. I just want you to get to the point, right? Because I have something else to do in another time. Again, we want to shift from time-oriented to people-oriented. Well, Melissa, I don't have all the time to listen to everyone on my team. We want to keep assurances. This is something that we talked about in building relationships. It's a maintenance strategy. An assurance is telling the other person, acknowledging their situation or their feeling, but giving them an assurance that you will address it at a later time, because right now you may not have that time. So that may sound something like, I can see you're frustrated about this project and may need some clearer direction to go. We only have 5 more minutes in this meeting, but I can meet with you tomorrow at X time to go over it in more detail. I've just shifted to person-oriented, acknowledging how they may be feeling, but giving them an assurance that we will discuss it at another time. Because our time is money, but we can do it at another time. Our content-oriented listening is just listening to understand, listening to what is it that I can get out of this? We're not really going toward an action. We're not short for time, but what are they saying? Be careful of just listening for the content because you may miss the person. Remember, people are your greatest resource in your business. So what are the underlying emotional cues that you may be able to discern? And then turn it into people-oriented listening. Give assurances. So I want to take some time now to use this skill, whether you're doing it at home as an example or here with us live. As we are asking or as we are doing people-oriented listening, we want to use 2 skills: clarifying questions and paraphrasing to enhance our active listening. Now, a clarifying question helps us to get more information so that we can make an informed decision. Clarifying questions are honing into the pieces of the statement that are making assumptions for us. Never assume. Even though you're super smart, don't assume. Have the person clarify, because this is also part of managing their emotion so that they are able to see what they are experiencing and why they're experiencing that emotion. Paraphrasing now is saying what the person has said in your own words. It's not repeating as parroting, but it's having the same idea to check for your accuracy in their message. So here I have an example. And let's start with a clarifying question. If you have the chat open, I'd love to see your responses. I'll read it first, and let's think about what needs more information. What do we need to know more about? They turned down my proposal. I can't believe it. I spent the better part of 2 weeks developing it. I have no clue what they really want. It's like a moving target. All right, folks, what isn't clear here? We might even talk like this too. So what do you think needs more clarity? I'll go first. They turned down my proposal. Who is they? You should be wondering that. Who is they? Is this a different group? Is this a supervisor? Who is they? Okay. Now, I have another one. Why is it a moving target? Yeah, what do you mean by a moving target? I don't know what that means. I can have some visuals in my head, but remember, our perspectives are different. We have another one here. My proposal. What proposal? What's the proposal? Have them articulate. What was that proposal? What was in that project? I can't believe it. I spent the better part of 2 weeks. How much time in those 2 weeks? A better part. I don't know what a better part is. Did you spend every working day for the past 2 weeks? Did you spend the last intense 24 hours working on it? And what was your developing process like? Here's another one. Who turned it down? What type of proposal were you developing? Beautiful. Did you receive specific instructions on what was expected? Yes. Great clarifying questions. What response were you looking to get? Great. How do you know, or how do you not know what the proposal entailed? So these are great questions asking the person to identify more of what they're thinking, because this is clearly an emotional response. Because it's not detailed, we are just trying to express our feelings of, this sounds like the person is frustrated, right? So who are we talking about here? What was your proposal? What were the metrics of your proposal? How much time did you actually spend on it? What was the original assignment? Did they give you feedback? Oh, these are coming in very wonderfully. Are you able to resubmit with changes? These are great clarifying questions. So now this is showing that you're actively engaged with this person's emotional expression about their proposal being turned down. Now, let's try paraphrasing this. You don't have to put it into a chat because it might get a little lengthy, but I'll give you an example. So it sounds like your proposal wasn't accepted, and it might be, if it sounds like it's disappointing to you. It sounds like you spent a lot of time on it without clear direction or understanding what the clear direction is. Is that close to how you're feeling about this situation? And the person, yes, that's exactly it. No, actually, and then they can correct your perception. Give them back a short summary of what they said, because part of this process is not only helping you to understand what they're trying to communicate, but it's also an important part of validation in their feeling. Folks, we walk around this life feeling crazy. Crazy meaning we're the only one that feels this way. You might be, but it's okay. It's okay. Let's get to a point of understanding why you're feeling that way and what can we do to help move through that emotion to something productive. So as we continue in the skill of actively listening, make sure you're using those clarifying questions. And now, what about some of those responses? This is a great slide for you to screenshot, write them down. Maybe you are responsible for one of these, either supportive or unsupportive, but these are just some to practice. When someone comes to you, when a team member comes to you, what are your responses? We typically call this feedback, right? We're not necessarily adding more to the story. This is not like our clarifying questions or even the paraphrasing, but these are the head nods or these little vocalizations that are either saying that we're supportive or we're unsupportive of what they're saying. So some supportive responses you'll see here. Oh, I see. What else happened? Asking for more. What do you mean by that? Clarifying question. How did that make you feel? Validating question. That's fantastic, great, wonderful. Again, a supportive response. That must have been horrible, sad, embarrassing. Supportive of whatever emotional response or emotional expression your teammate is sharing. Unsupportive responses, that's crazy. That the situation is crazy or I'm crazy. That is often misinterpreted. Be careful of that one. I don't see why that made you angry or upset or disappointed. That is invalidating our feelings, right? That's telling them, don't cry. There's nothing for you to cry about. I'm feeling. Let them feel the way they're feeling. It's their feeling. If you think that's bad, listen to this. Ooh, this one, a lot of us are guilty of. When someone is sharing, we want to share too. And then often we turn the conversation to us. Don't do it. Don't do it. You will have an opportunity to express your feelings about your situation. We often want to show that we identify with the experience by sharing, but what that does is not supporting them. It's not allowing them to have their expression of that moment, okay? You think you're the only one, you think you're the only person who's had that problem? That, again, is unsupportive and dismissive of their emotion. Have you had a proposal that was turned down? Probably. Does it help this person to tell them that they're not the only one? No, it doesn't. It just adds to the frustration. But if you can say, oh, that must have been hard. I can understand that feeling. Let's see if we can identify what their deliverables were or what was their original plan. That then helps them toward a positive action to improve the situation. While you are saying these things, what does your body look like? Remember, we say a lot with our body. You don't have to say anything to be supportive or to be unsupportive. So folks, while you are in your wonderful homes and spaces, take some time to look at your face. What is your resting face? What's the face that you use when people talk to you? Create a face that is warm, that welcomes. If you are a leader, you need to be approachable because you need your team to come to you. So what does your body language look like when you listen? First of all, I have to acknowledge that you have to take care of yourself. So if that's putting on a face mask to make that smile better, do it. If that is taking a nice warm shower so that you are relaxed, do it. But you have to practice that face. What's the face you're going to give when they come to speak to you? Melissa, is that your face? Or Melissa, yes. Is it inviting? Okay. When someone is sharing with you, whether it is an emotionally triggering expression, maintain your eye contact, right? We have direct but not intense eye contact. Our head nodding up and down shows support, right? We're matching what that emotion is appropriately, whether it is a positive emotion or a negative emotion. Think about your facial expressions. Discouraging nonverbals, avoiding eye contact, fidgeting, And I'm going to bring up these wonderful devices that we always have with us. Even touching it is dismissive of someone sharing with us or turning away. Yes, we need to know what time it is, but if they are in the middle of sharing or starting to share, just that one glance down has just told them that what they're saying isn't important to you. So today we've talked about, one, acknowledging how you feel. It is important for you to take time for yourself. It is important for you to understand how you feel, what are your physical responses, so that you can control how you will respond verbally and non-verbally when interacting with your team. As we're interacting with our team, we think about what messages are we sending with our body and our verbal messages. And we're thinking about using those clarifying questions and paraphrasing. And that's what will help us stay cool in those emotionally intense events. And lastly, I will always say, folks, seek mental health counseling or therapy. We have to destigmatize this. And I will give you an example of what it means to go to a therapist. You get a cold, you start to feel it get a little, a little something in the side, and it starts to get a little worse. What do? You go to the doctor. You go to the doctor to get maybe antibiotics to help it. A lot of the time they say, drink plenty of fluids and rest. What about your mind? You, as an entrepreneur, have so many responsibilities, so many things to juggle. It is completely okay to go to a therapist, to go to a counselor. They are a licensed professional that helps you to systematize all the concepts that we've talked about, to perhaps work through some of those past experiences that are in the bottom of our iceberg that will help us to be calm and collected no matter the situation. This takes practice, it takes time, and it takes loving yourself. Oh, we have a certified life coach here. So I hope these have been some concepts that you can co-sign. Are there any questions on our concepts of today? Those of you who are here with us live, I'm willing to answer them. I'm happy to answer them. You're absolutely, absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for co-signing. Yes. Well, folks, this was the fourth of our four-part communication series. If you missed any others, please feel free to see them online. They have been recorded. We have a couple of sessions tomorrow at 10 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. at the office. We would love to see you there. Otherwise, great job and good luck on your future endeavors. We hope to see you. Take care.
You were amazing, Professor. I just want you to know that you were amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you for being here. My pleasure.
Absolutely. Are they gonna, do you know when they're gonna do the minority women business class?
I'm not sure. I would say call the office. They're good at returning calls. Let me see if I can get their number quickly.
I have it. You don't
You
have to
do?
even look for it. I do have it.
Okay. I know they'll be in tomorrow, so give them a
Okay,
ring or shoot
perfect.
them an email.
Perfect. Thank you again for everything. You were amazing. And the next time I make some goat, I'm coming for you.
Yes. On the stove, not in the pot.
No, on the stove. I don't use that pressure cooker anymore. It's no good. Soon as I saw that thing, I was like, she
No.
did pressure cooker.
Oh, Kirsten, good luck. Good luck. Wonderful to meet you.
Same as well. Have a great evening.
You too. Go
Bye
ahead.
now.
Bye-bye. Go ahead, Tina.
I too want to thank you. Excellent, excellent class.
Thank
I
you.
heard you mention that it was a four-part. Where
Yes.
would I see that? Would that be on YouTube at Suffolk County Community College?
So you can go to, I'm trying to pull up the link right now and I'll put it in the chat so you can get to it. It's on the continuing education site. And the same place where you signed up for the webinar, I think they have it
Okay.
right down there. Give me one more moment and I will get to it. Grow your business. Here we go. All right. Okay. Do you see it in the chat?
I do not. I don't know why.
Okay, so if you're not able to see it there, it's just at entrepreneurial assistance. Let's see if I can share my screen. Oh, we have it. Are you able to see it from our host?
Let's see. No, I have sent to host and panelists, but I don't have the one where I can see what you put. I have it as if I'm sending it to you.
So you can't see what I'm sending to the whole group.
Right, that's correct.
Okay, let me share my screen so at least you can see it on top here. So this is YouTube. This is
okay.
the link takes us to Entrepreneurial Assistance C7260. And then I can show you how to get there from the continuing ed site. So here's a continuing education and workforce training. If you go to workforce training, then Entrepreneurial Assistance Center, and then you'll scroll down and see how to grow your business training.
Okay.
And then scroll down again. It's a little buried, but past webinar series recordings. And that will get you to that YouTube channel.
Okay, tell me again what the name of yours is?
So you should say communication strategies, build strong place relationships. I don't know if these will come up for you, but it's one of the newer ones.
Okay, and that's fine.
Yeah, communication strategies and building strong workplace relationships and networking for small business owners.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Again, thank you so much. Great class. Excellent. Like I said, I needed to get the skill set down pat, and I believe that I have.
Thank you, Tina. That is what we're striving for. So thank you so much for the feedback.